defense, secondary, and everything going on there, and the offense and what to expect going forward. Let's get started here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, now we are going to talk Arizona secondary, and we're going to get to the offense there as well. But we broke down the Arizona defense, the front, and the linebacking unit. Now we need to talk about the secondary. And in the secondary, the first name that I think people need to know is Ephesians Prysock. Now, first of all, great name. But second of all, this is the player that when you watch Arizona, when you watch their practices, he's the guy that stands out. He's the guy that, he's just the way that he moves, the way you look at his length, everything about him, he just stands out. And that's something that I think is that's some pretty impressive stuff right there. And he's a legitimate, and I'm saying this again, he's a legitimate too. So he kind of fits in with that new age, that new cornerback type look that, so many are going for. But I think if you're Arizona, you need him to take that next step. You need him to be able to be that guy that can take over. It could be that cornerback number one for you, much the way that Christian Roland Wallace was. But I will say that I think that he has a little bit of he has a higher upside. I will put it to you like that than Christian Roland Wallace did, and that's it's no diss towards Christian Roland Wallace. But Ephesians Prysock has to be that guy, in my opinion, and I think he will be that guy. Now, opposite him, I think you're probably looking at a Charles Yates. Now, Charles Yates came here. He's an interesting case, right? Because Yates came here out of junior college, and not only did he come here out of junior college, he was not exactly highly recruited. There wasn't a lot of people that were, looking at him and saying that, we got to be able to get this guy. So again, there is definitely that factored in right there when it comes to Yates. But he has come to Arizona, and not only has he just, surpassed, I think, everybody's expectations. He has been physical. He has been a leader out there. He's a little bit older already to begin with, so that's something that obviously to keep in mind. But he's been very, very good for what Arizona wants to do, and I think you're going to continue to see him be very good for what Arizona wants to do. But again, I think those are going to be your two corners right there. Then after that, it becomes a little fascinating because I think you got maybe a Traden Stukes in there, probably at that nickel spot. I am not a huge fan of Traden Stukes as a starter, but, if he's your third corner, if he's your third or fourth corner coming in, I'm more than okay with that because, again, he's a pretty good player. Not great, but a pretty good player, and I think that's a role that is more his speed. I'll just put it to you like that. Now, some of the other players then that you got. Where is now in that secondary, now we're going to look at the safeties because this is where it gets fascinating because you got a multitude of guys. Now, again, Gunnar Maldonado is going to play. As many people know, I was not a fan of Gunnar Maldonado last year until the end, but then he became good at the end. So if a player becomes good, I am more than okay with changing my opinion on said player if he becomes good, and he became pretty good. So again, I'm okay with that. But again, he is a little bit limited, so take that for what it's worth right there. Now, then the guy that I think I'm very, very intrigued by is Genesis Smith. Genesis Smith is the safety out of Chandler. We've talked about him before. Watch him, about 6'1", looks a lot like Adam Hall that we talked about, and he is a big hitter. He is a guy that is going to come in and he is going to hit people, and obviously you like that. Now, where can he, how good is he going to be? How ready is he for the game? I think that's something that's got to be, I think a lot of people are probably a little curious about. I mean, I don't know exactly either, but I do believe once he hits the field, I do think that he's probably not coming off the field. He's got that kind of ability. I think that he was underrated by the scouting services. And, again, take that for what it's worth coming from me. Now, somebody else, Dalton Johnson. Johnson's been here forever, it seems. And Johnson he's not really ever made a huge impact here, but he really flashed during the spring. And not only did he really flash during the spring, he was kind of all over. He was a player that, I think the coaching staff was looking to try to utilize in a variety of different ways. Keep in mind, he's been here for a while now. He was a guy that came in under Kevin Sumlin, so you got to remember that. But a good player, though, an opportunistic player as well. But again, we'll have to see if this can really translate to the field, to live action. But so far, so good in the secondary. I mean, I think there's some real talent there. Now, granted, losing Christian Roland Wallace was a blow for sure. I don't think that I don't think I'm breaking any news right there. But I think you're also seeing right now that this is a team that, again, we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep coming back to this. Bend but don't break right here on defense. All we need is for the U of A to be somewhere in that 7 to 9 range, I guess, when it comes to defense. Because, again, I think the offense is going to be fantastic. I think the offense is going to put up a lot of points this year. And so, again, you just need a defense that is not going to absolutely kill you out there. And I think you'll be in pretty good shape at that point. So, that's kind of what you're looking at right there in the secondary. Now, again, this will be interesting to see a DJ Warnell, for example. How does DJ Warnell play? Because, again, UCLA transfer, got some time, lost some time last year, second year in the system. And as we've talked about, the great Dwayne Akina being the defensive analyst is something that I think is going to pay huge dividends. I love bringing him in. Also love the coaching hires as well. I think the staff has been upgraded. I'm excited to see this defense. Again, I don't expect it to be great. As a matter of fact, I don't even necessarily expect it to be very good. But I don't expect it to be awful, though, this year. And it was awful last year. I mean, we can just call it what it was right there. So that's kind of where you're at on the defensive side of the ball. Now, there'll be some other guys that maybe, can step in there as well. But those are kind of the names that you need to know. Now, from an offensive perspective, then, we'll start at the quarterback spot. Obviously, Jaden DeLora has been in the news. The U of A has announced that he will his status with the team remains unchanged, and I'm okay with that. Now, listen, those are some grisly details, but so much of that is juvenile records that nobody has access to. And if you don't have access to them, then I think it's hard to make an appropriate decision. So again, this isn't Greg Byrne. This is Dave Hickey right here. I have a lot more faith in him being able to make that right decision from a character perspective. So fine with that. And I expect DeLora to have a big season. By all accounts, he's done everything that the coaching staff has wanted from him. And he's also he's got a bevy of receiving options to be able to go to. But DeLora's right there. And when it looked like his status could be up in the air a little bit, I'll be honest with you, I was fine because I thought whenever Noah Fafita is going to hit the field, we've talked about this, I don't think he's coming off. I think that, yes, he is 5'7", but there's just something different about him. There's something when you look at Noah, you can just kind of tell that players gravitate towards him. He's got a big-time arm. He can move around as well. I like him. I'm a big fan of what Noah Fafita can do. And then, obviously, you got Braden Dorman as well. So those three guys right there, I think at the quarterback spot, you got one of the more talented quarterback rooms in the conference. Now, again, it might not be the best quarterback room, but it's up there. And when was the last time that you could say that at Arizona? It has been a minute. And then, so that's kind of where you're at the quarterback spot. Again, I don't think that Jaden DeLora is one of the three best quarterbacks in the conference, but I think he's probably fourth. And I think that you're going to see numbers that are going to end success that will indicate that. Then, obviously, at the running back spots is fascinating because you do have Michael Wiley returning. Michael Wiley was fantastic for Arizona last year, and it was big time getting him back. He can run. He can catch out of the backfield. He can do a lot of different things right there. And then you got Jonah Coleman as well. Jonah Coleman, the weight room warrior that Jonah Coleman has been, obviously has been at the top of so many people's list, is just somebody that's impressed. Excited to see him. And then you got DJ Williams as well. That is a very, very talented running back unit right there, all three of those guys. And again, kind of like with the quarterbacks, when you're at Arizona, a lot of times you don't get to say that that's a very talented quarterback unit. That is very talented, or quarterback and running back unit right there. And that's going to be able to help Jaden DeLora. Again, he doesn't have to do it all by himself. And I think when you're looking at the players that he's going to have, he doesn't need to. Now, let's talk about some of those guys he'll be throwing to. I believe that Arizona's got the best receiver room in the conference. If you can find me a better starting duo than T-Mac and Jacob Cowing, I'd love to see it. Both of those guys are all-American type players, in my opinion. Now, T-Mac came here as probably the most highly regarded skill player, at least during the recruiting era rankings. And he didn't disappoint. Now, again, it took him a couple games, I think, to really kind of get going. But, at the end of the day, he was good for 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. I think he was freshman All-American. I think you're going to see those numbers go up. I think that he's probably going to catch for something like 1,200 yards this year and 13, 14 touchdowns, and I think he's going to be all conference. I think he makes a big jump and again, he's that good. He's that dude that can make that big jump because of how talented he is. And then you got Jacob Cowing as well. Big fan of Jacob Cowing. Was a little surprised he decided to come back, but that's obviously great for Arizona. Not the tallest guy in the world, but his yards after catch are absolutely amazing. And he can he's another player that everybody just kind of gravitates towards. You watch him, and he's a player that'll probably catch for about 1,100 yards this year. I think he's very much in that T-Mac boat, and I think both those guys will go over 1,000 yards this year and over 20 touchdowns. I think both those players are that good. They are those players. Now, at the some of the other receiver spots, they're obviously recruiting a few guys, but again, I am a big fan of Kevin Green. I love when Kevin Green came here. I love the fact, obviously USC decommit, and he absolutely balled out during the spring. And he did that last year, and he did that again this year. When the lights come on, he seems to really play well. He did that again in the scrimmage, and when he catches the ball, he is a real problem because he can get when he gets loose, he's gone. And that's where I think that he has a plethora of potential right there. I like him a lot. I know Arizona's recruiting some other running back or other wide receivers. I totally trust the coaching staff, but at the same time, I also really like Kevin Green, so I'd like to see him get on the field. And then you got Malachi Riley as well, big time wide receiver who, if you remember, he was an interesting guy because at that wide receiver spot, he's a little bit of a bigger dude for sure, but Arizona was looking at a Trey Spivey right there, and when Arizona couldn't get when it looked like Arizona could possibly get Trey Spivey, they said, "Oh, well, you know what? We're going to get somebody that's even more talented," and we got Malachi Riley right there, and that's where it's exciting, I think, with Malachi Riley. Now, let's talk a little bit here about FanDuel. Now, great thing about FanDuel, you might say to yourself, what makes FanDuel so unique? Well, thanks for asking. FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege. Check it out. In this day and age, when you're betting money, you want to be able to put your money in something where that you can get to it, the money's good, and FanDuel is that. The money is good with FanDuel, and that's why you want to utilize FanDuel. So again, FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege. Check it out. You can bet in-game, you can bet props, you name it. Again, they got it. FanDuel, FanDuel Sportsbook, and with baseball here, basketball playoffs coming on, If you don't really have much interest in any of the teams that you're watching, you know what does make it more interesting? Betting on those teams, because then you got an interest, then you got a little bit of a skin in the game right there. So again, check it out, FanDuel. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with you. Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk a little bit about where Arizona is from an offensive perspective at the tight end spot. They're loaded. I love Tanner McLaughlin. We've talked about this from day one, but this coaching staff has an innate ability to be able to recruit or to be able to evaluate young, under the radar type players. Tanner McLaughlin fits right into that class right there. He is about 6'5", 240. He's a massive dude, probably going to play in the NFL. Or he's at least going to have a real chance to play in the NFL. That's how talented the other T-Mac is right there. Again, just a guy that gets open. And then you got Kean Burnett right behind him. Kean Burnett, ex-4-star, another USC decommit. Kean Burnett, I think he makes a big jump this year. Physically, he looks fantastic. He's put on some good weight. He's got more of an identity in the system. I think Kean is going to have a big time season this year. Big fan of what he's going to be able to do at that tight end spot. And then another guy I think we need to keep an eye on is Tyler Powell. Big man out of Phoenix, huge kid, really tall. Might not factor in on the playing field a ton this year, but that following year, you could certainly see him in that case because there's going to be there's going to be time to be had because Tanner McLaughlin will moved on. Kean Burnett will obviously still be here. So that's where you're kind of at right there at that tight end spot. And then at the offensive line, it's fascinating. Again, as long as Jordan Morgan is healthy and ready to go, I think Jordan Morgan is going to be a monster for the U of A. He's according to Pro Football Focus, he's the leading returning tackle in the conference. And you watched him and you could tell that there's a reason that he's on NFL radars. Now, if he doesn't get hurt, he's probably off in the NFL right now, but he did get hurt, so he's back here at the U of A. And just watching him move around so far, he has looked very, very good moving around, and that's what you want to see. Again, very, very impressed so far by what we've seen from Jordan Morgan in his rehabilitation. And then the big man on the line that everybody knows, that everybody's talked about, big Jonah Savaiinaea. Jonah is a player that Arizona generally doesn't get. And they probably benefited. Well, they did benefit from Hawaii and the COVID year because this is a kid that probably should be playing at Alabama or Georgia or starting there. He has that type of ability. But Arizona has him, and he is an absolute freak. They're playing him at tackle right now, and that just goes to show you, too, how great he is because, again, he can play a tackle, he can play interior, and I think he's going to dominate at either level. That's how good Jonah Savaiinaea is. Then on the interior, you got Josh Baker, solid at the center position. Not great, but solid. And then you got Big Wendell Moe there as well, mowing people down. Get it? That was funny right there. But so you got to find out one other position right there. What do you want to do at that tackle, or what do you want to do on that guard spot? Because I think you're probably going to see Savaiinaea stay at tackle. I would imagine that's what you're going to see anyway. And I'm quite frankly, I'm okay with that. If the coaching staff views that that's what they want to do, then I'm cool with it because again, they've got a pretty good track record here when it comes to dealing with this kind of stuff. But again, you got those four linemen I'm good with. Maybe a Robert Polito when he comes in or somebody like that. But again, it'll be fascinating to see who they can get at that other guard spot. But overall, I expect this team, like we've been talking about, I expect this team to be a bowl team this year. I think I'm predicting 7 wins for the Wildcats. That's where I think they're going to be. And I've seen nothing to indicate that they won't be a 7-win team. So, again, big kudos to Jed Fish for what he's done here because I think Arizona is certainly on the ascendancy. Okay, so we wanted to talk all Arizona football these last 2 shows. We're going to get back into Arizona basketball tomorrow. That is the lifeblood of Arizona athletics right here. But, again, there's a lot of good stuff going on with Arizona football, and we wanted to touch base right there as well. So, I'm going to sign off right here. But as always, Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Back the A. We will be back with you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.